welcome back to the Notcast. It is episode 255. Today I am going to be talking about a band which is the reason why I haven't done one of these for about 2.5 weeks. That band is The Cure, and today I will be talking about being a Cure fan over the past decade or so, from 2011 through to last week, and that covers 3 live albums, a remix album, 2 reissues, a Robert Smith solo single, and lots and lots of touring. Now, it's been 2.5 weeks since I last did one of these. The reason being is I have been on tour. I went to see The Cure play 5 shows on their Shows of a Lost World, or Shows from a Lost World tour. The t-shirt which I've got here, Shows of a Lost World. 5 shows, 1 in Birmingham, 1 in Cardiff, 3 in Wembley. I also was working, travelling. I did about 1,000 miles in that week. And also I have had a little bit of time off, and I've hung out with my family to remind them what I look like after having been away for so long. So this is the longest gap between Notcast episodes I've ever had, and I'm sure the vast majority of you haven't noticed. And the reason why I was away for 7 days was The Cure. There were 4 bands in my mind that I needed to see post-COVID, to say, right, if I get those 4 bands, I know that I have survived, and almost everything has come back. And the 4 most important bands to me are respectively, and in not any particular order, The Cure, The Twilight Sad, Suede, and U2. And I didn't see U2 because U2 haven't actually played a show. It's a 4-piece since December 2019. But I did see Bono, which is the nearest thing to a U2 show that there has been. And it was getting to see The Cure and that moment where I kind of thought, we've made it to the other side of this catastrophic, cataclysmic event. And COVID isn't over, but it's transformed, it's changed, it's different now, it's something new. It's still there on the horizon, but the period which we had, about 18 months of never leaving the house, of enforced distance, of not being near people, of not being able to go and see bands, not really being able to go to the cinema, of almost the world being in a quiet kind of pause, feels like it's changed now. It's come back to something. Unfortunately, the world isn't necessarily better. Some parts of it are worse than ever, but overall, from my perspective, it feels like we've come through the other side of what's happened at its very worst, and we're on the way up. And seeing The Cure was a really important part of that for me, is to be able to go, The Cure are back. Now, in the period, the 10 years before this tour, 11 years actually, 2011 to 2022, The Cure have been primarily a live band. They have released 3 albums, but they've been live ones, and a remix set, and 2 reissues. So there's not been a new album of original Cure material that's been released since 2008. And I think there's a few reasons for that. The lineup changed, and I don't know the reasons why the lineup changed. I know that Pearl left the group, and there's a lot of rumours as to why that happened, and I don't want to really talk about those because they're rumours. There's very little in the way of fact in a rumour. Even if the rumours are true, it's still just a rumour. And there's also the fact that The Cure came to the end of their record deal, and since then they have not released a studio album. Now, there's I think an element of performance anxiety in that, alongside a lot of other bands. Morrissey didn't make a record for 7 years. Sisters of Mercy haven't made one for 33 years or 32 years now. Sorry, put an extra year in. Pink Floyd and David Gilmour didn't make one for 12 years. And I think there's an element of kind of going, well, the things about being, famous and successful come with them a certain amount of prestige. Guns N' Roses as well, for example, had 17 years between Use Your Illusion and Chinese Democracy. And I think a part of that comes from the idea of going, well, I used to sell lots and lots of records. I may not sell that many records now, irrespective of the fact that nobody sells as many records as they used to. The days of selling 30 million copies of an album are just junk. They're over. You'll get the streams that will be the way of judging whether you're popular or you're not. People, the CD was only ever a music delivery device in the way that a cigarette is a nicotine delivery system. And so the only way previously that people could get that access to that music was to buy the product. Now they can stream it. And you look at some of the streaming numbers that there are for some of the bands. You're then at the point where you kind of think, well, no wonder some bands only sell 10,000 copies of an album or 8,000 copies of an album. Because if people wanted to hear the new songs, they just have to press play on Spotify. They don't have to buy the CD in order to achieve that. But there's an element, I think, of perception. I go, I'm not selling 3 million copies of an album anymore. And it's like, irrespective of the fact that nobody's selling 3 million copies of an album anymore, that's the thing which people want to or kind of avoid, and their ego tells them that actually it's still important to sell as many copies as possible. The other part of it is there's elements like contracts, there's elements about hassle, there's doing interviews, videos, TV appearances, meeting people you don't necessarily want to meet. They're necessary evils sometimes, and they're part of your job, and you kind of go, well, all right, I'll appear on Graham Norton or whatever if it means I get to play the song live. But the flip side of that is, if I can still sell lots and lots of tickets and enjoy it without the worry of not selling enough copies or the worry of having to meet Graham Norton or someone. By the way, if you're Graham Norton, no disrespect to you, I'm using you as a random example of a chat show host, some of whom aren't that wonderful. Graham Norton is probably one of the better ones. But there's an idea of age, contracts, hassle, the business, the perception, and why play the game if you don't want to, if you don't particularly care about chart positions? Why release a record? And as people get older, I mean, certainly as I've got older, I've got less tolerance for putting up with the things that I don't like. When I was 18 or whatever, and I had to put up with certain things because I was 18 years old and nobody took me seriously. Obviously, I'm not 18 years old anymore. I don't have to put up with certain things, so I don't. And also there's an element of experience which goes, well, actually, if I don't have to do this, if I don't have to put myself through or put up with things which I don't enjoy and I don't have to do it, then why do I do it? And the reward has to outpay the effort and the risk that comes with it. So thinking about, for example, you don't have to worry about chart sales, radio play, press, TV appearances, or anything like that. So come the end of the 413 Dream period, we had the Cure as effectively the biggest unsigned band in Britain, with a core trio of Robert, Simon and Jason. And 2010 was a very quiet year. Disintegration got a 3-disc reissue. On Treat Plus became a double vinyl release. There were no gigs for the first time in several years. I think the last time there was no gigs was 1994 when the band were going through being taken through court by Lol. Robert made a guest appearance on a track by Crystal Castles called Night in Love. And then we had 2011. And 2011 was started off with a kind of like a 30th anniversary set of shows, 9 shows where the band would play their first 3 albums and associated B-sides. These shows were called the Reflections shows. And they started at Sydney Opera House in May 2011, where Roger came back and played keyboards. Lol played additional drums and percussion, and the band performed the Three Imaginary Boys, 17 Seconds and Faith albums, as well as an encore which featured some B-sides and some rare tracks, as well as sometimes Let's Go to Bed, The Walk and Love Cats. And this was a strange period to be a fan of the band. It was the first, obviously, retrospective touring activity the band had done. They'd done the trilogy shows in 2002, but that saw them touring their then current album, Blood Flowers, as well as Disintegration and Pornography. But this was the first time that the band were deliberately kind of hallmarking or portraying themselves as a museum piece, a heritage act. And I got to see the show at the Royal Albert Hall in November 2011. It was an incredible experience, actually, because I've never seen the vast majority of those songs played live. Some of those songs, Subway Song, I think Accuracy, Grinding Halt, were brought back at the end of the Wild Mood Swings tour in 1996. But aside from that, there were a number of songs that had never been played live before. Doubt and World War, for example. And then there were 9 songs which hadn't been played since 1981 that were back in the set list for the first time in 30 years. And those shows were 3 shows, or actually 3 separate lineups, divided by a 20-minute intermission, a trio of Robert, Simon and Jason playing the Three Imaginary Boys album in full, front to back. Then the 17 Seconds album with Roger on keyboards, again the 10 songs or 8 songs that are on that, and then a break, and then the Faith album with Lord playing drums alongside Jason there, and then the encore of B-sides. So, you know, you got songs like Descent and Another But Journey by Train, and Cold, or more correctly, I'm Cold, and World War. You know, songs that I thought, you'd never hear The Cure play World War. They didn't think it was good enough to be released, let alone anything else. They even played the Weedy Burton, I think, although it was only 30 seconds long, but they did play it. Named, of course, after Bert Weedon, who'd written the How to Play Guitar the Easy Way book in the 70s. They also played one proper not themed show in 2011, and that was the show at the Isle of Wight Festival in September 2011. Nobody knew who was going to be in the lineup until the band appeared on stage. The lineup was Simon, Robert, Jason and Roger returning on keyboards as a 4-piece, Robert playing all the guitar parts, and that was released as the live album Bestival Live 2011. And this is a lovely live album. If you're a fan of The Cure, buy it. It's overlooked, and I think it was the first one of the Cure's albums which didn't get a vinyl release. Still hasn't got a vinyl release. I'm sure it will get a vinyl release at some point. But it features the whole of, I think, the 32 song set, featuring live debuts for a number of songs that haven't been on any previous live albums. Let's just quickly go through. So there's The End of the World, The Only One. Push, I think, gets its first live album appearance. We get The Hungry Ghost, Love Cats, Caterpillar, Hot Hot Hot, Boys Don't Cry, Jumping Someone Else's Train, Grinding Halt, and Why Can't I Be You, all getting their first appearance on a live Cure album. And to date, I think it's the one of only 3 full-length Cure shows which has actually been officially released as an audio CD. But as it says on here, the music has been mixed to be played loud, so turn it up. And again, it features the four members of The Cure, Roger being an official member of The Cure, according to that, and then photos. There was also a TV broadcast of most of the show that was on Sky Arts in the UK, but I'm sure that's all on YouTube now. And again, it's a very kind of like, you know, low energy, not low energy, but low effort, no frills, pretty basic live album that's fantastic and much underappreciated in the band's canon, I think. Most people, of course, will say that they much prefer the other live albums because it's got Jason on, and Jason is a terrible drummer. That is not true. But I think this is a great live album. In 2012, in keeping with the band's kind of general cycle and rhythm of playing a substantial tour about every 4 years, the band did a European festival tour, starting, I think, in Pink Pop, which might be Landgraf or Utrecht or somewhere like that. I think it is in May 2012. At that point, the band had added an extra member, Reeves Gabrels. Reeves Gabrels effectively taken the lead guitar post, as vacated by Pearl and before that by Perry, returned the Cure back to a 5-piece configuration. And as soon as I heard that Reeves was in the band, I was like, of course, what a brilliant choice. What a brilliant choice to play guitar in the band. Reeves had played with David Bowie in between 1988 and 1999, and I think he's the person that's written more songs with David Bowie than anybody else in the world, so clearly must have been rated by him. And Reeves has a wonderful guitar style that's not necessarily atonal, but it's slightly eclectic, it's not traditional, got some very unusual approaches to certain parts of melodies. And as soon as I heard that he was in the band, I was like, oh, that is a wonderful choice. This, of course, wasn't Reeves' first appearance with The Cure. He played on the Wrong Number single in 1997. He played with Robert on stage as well at David Bowie's 50th birthday show in New York in 1997 as well. And I saw the show at the Reading Festival, which was broadcast on BBC TV And I have very little memory of that show now, apart from the fact that I bought a new pair of Doc Martens and I was wearing it to the show, and I really should have worn those shoes in before the gig, because I was in pain at the end of that. And it was again, this was the start of, I think, the Cure's existence as a substantially touring band. So in 2012 they did, I think, 28, 30 festival shows all across Europe, including, I think, their first performance in Russia, coming to a close at the Electric Picnic in Ireland in September 2013. Saw the band play live. A limited number of engagements in South America, America, and various festivals. They brought the song Burn into the set list for the first time, and in Mexico on Robert's birthday they played their longest show, which was 4 hours and 13 minutes. There's an incredible set list there. I just kept going. I'm going to play every song that we've rehearsed, even including Robert playing a number of acoustic tracks, which he doesn't generally tend to play live. There's a version of that show which is on YouTube, which has audio which has been professionally mixed, and a new drum track laid down by Jason for the COVID period mental health drumathon, which is down there in the comments. I'll link to it. Tim Pope shot a number of those shows with the idea of doing a South American tour, Blu-ray and DVD. That didn't transpire. The Reflection show in 2011 was also filmed with the aim for a future release. That hasn't come out. And in 2014, the band announced some more shows. This time they were going to play 2 shows at the Royal Albert Hall on the, I think, 28th and 29th of March 2014 for the Teenage Cancer Trust, where the band played, I think, a 3.25 hour show, and that brought back into the set list some songs that we thought we'd never hear the band play live again. So they played Too Late and Harold and Joe at those shows, and I think they added Doing the Unstuck for the first time in a long time as well. So again, these are songs that the bands are going into some deep cuts. I remember, even though at that point I was over 20 years into seeing The Cure, there were 3 songs up that show at the Royal Albert Hall I saw, which I'd never seen them play in the previous 20 years. Those, of course, being Harold and Joe, Too Late and Burn. And a version of that show was filmed, professionally shot, mixed and recorded, and later published to raise money for charity in 2020. 2015 was very quiet by Cure standards. There was only one release, but before I get to that, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. 2014 was closed off with 5 shows at the London Hammersmith Odeon, also now known as the Apollo. It'll always be the Odeon to me, where the band said that they were going to be playing shorter shows than normal with lower ticket prices. We paid £25 for a ticket, compared to the previous show, the Teenage Cancer Trust show, which was about £120, where it was a charity show. The show at the Hammersmith Odeon was meant to be a shorter show, so therefore the ticket price was lower. The band and also the Trees were supporting, but the band still played, I think, a very long set. The last show they played, which was the show that I saw on the 23rd of December 2014, 8 years ago today, was a mere 44 songs, which worked out at about 40-50 pence per song. Obviously, I felt enormously cheated and decided to not claim for a refund. I remember watching the end of the show. They closed with Hey You, which they hadn't played since, I think, 2004. And they've only played Hey You, I think, 7 times in total. I remember watching Jason playing the drums during Hey You, and Hey You closed the show. It's the only time that Hey You was closed the show, because it features the lyric around "You're the one that looks like Christmas, Christmas, come over here and kiss me," which gives the Kiss Me album its name. But I remember watching at the end of that, and there was just this bit where Jason, having played something like 132 songs over the previous 3 days, just at the end, and kind of slumped over his drum kit like, I made it, I did it, I'm exhausted, but I did it. And anybody that doubts his abilities as a drummer, I defy you to play 44 songs for 3 nights in a row every night and not at least feel the pressure a little bit. But it was a brilliant gig. I was not okay. I remember my friend Jem going, "Are you all right?" And I went, "No, I'm not." I'd had some very upsetting personal news that week that was going to see a major life change ahead of me. and I was seeing The Cure, and I knew that I was not going to be okay, and I was worrying about what was going to happen in 2015. And my 2015 had a really bad thing happen in it, I'll put it that way, which is not for public consumption. But I'm here and I survived it, and I'm better and happier now than I have been in a long time. The 2015 period was also the period where The Cure, for the first time in a little while, didn't play any shows. What they did do is that they released, or more correctly, Robert Smith recorded a B-side for his favourite band, the Twilight Sads, who, by the way, are my favourite band. I first heard of the Twilight Sads in 2014 when they were supporting Manic Street Preachers and Editors. And so I got to hear just ahead of this. So by the time it said Robert Smith doing a remix for the B-side, I was like, oh, that is going to be fantastic. But it wasn't. It was a cover version. So this is the first and so far only completely solo Robert Smith single, I think. It is a double A-side. The A-side is It Never Was the Same by the Twilight Sads here. The B-side is a cover version of the Sads, There's a Girl in the Corner. And this is a quite important record for me, because this was the record where it became known that Robert Smith really liked the Twilight Sads, and the band, the Twilight Sad, have played There's a Girl in the Corner at near enough every show since then, because it's one of their best songs, and it's a great song, and it works very, very well live. For some reason, this 7-inch is horrendously expensive now. That's probably because there are more fans of the Twilight Sad than there are records, and of course it is also a Robert Smith solo release, and this features all the voices and instruments by Robert, produced and engineered at his home studio, which I've recently learned the home address of his home studio, but I'm not telling you where he lives. That's not for you. But there you go, that was 2015. And then in 2016, the band went back out on tour, and they played, I think, 76 shows across America and Europe. The Twilight Sad were their support act of choice. They played Bestival in, again, 5 years after the previous festival, this time as a 5-piece with Reeves. The Twilight Sad supported The Cure at every show, or appeared at every festival bill that they appeared on. And so we'll have the benefit of exposure, and it brought a lot of new fans into the Twilight Sads fan base, for which I'm actually super grateful, because I think they're a great band, and the more people that like them, the better. They also played 2 new songs on this tour, The Cure. They played It Can Never Be the Same, and also Step Into the Light, which they played. Generally, they played one of the new songs at each of the shows. At the encore stage, playing a combination in the main set of hits and rare tracks, and then they played they played the new song and some other tracks. They played 3-hour shows, and I saw 3. Well, actually, I saw 2 of the shows, to my eternal shame. I saw the first and last nights at Wembley. I missed the second night, which, if I could go back in time and change my gigging plans, I would go and see The Cure for that second night as well. Because they played one of the songs there that I've still not seen them play live. I won't mention which one. I think they played the same Deep Water as You that night, which is the Cure song that they've played the most that I haven't seen live yet. And they played good, strong, solid sets. You know, you're watching them and there's no sense that it's a legacy act or a nostalgia act. It's just a band that has old songs that are still playing, solid, passionate songs. I've seen some unamazing Cure shows. My least favourite Cure show ever was probably the Manchester show in 2004, for example, and that was not long before the lineup fractured on the back of what I regard to be probably their second worst album, The Cure. I've seen The Cure play some not amazing shows, but every show that I have seen in the past 15 years has been phenomenally good. It's, every show has been very, very good, and it's been a band that's clearly not phoning in, a band that's giving it all. They're putting it all out there on the stage. They're legendary for their live shows, for the length of their shows, and for the quality of their shows. They're not like someone like Depeche Mode, where you're going to get the same 8 songs in the same order right at the end, and it's always going to be the same hits. Cure gigs are epic in scope and scale and in breadth of emotion. and in commitment. There's no phoning it in the way in which you would see with somebody like, let's say, Bon Jovi or something, which is just another day at the office. You know, a Cure show is an exploration. Every time they play those songs, they are the same yet different every single time. And it's a fabulous experience to be a Cure fan at the moment, to see the band play so many shows and to be able to experience something that's the same but different every single time. The kind of the way that I think about seeing the Cure is kind of like, you know, when you're really, really in love with somebody and you're in a relationship with them and you have sex with them, and it's, you know, the same, but at the same point it's different and it's unique every single time, and it's phenomenal and mind-blowing. It's that kind of experience when you see the Cure, although obviously slightly less intimate in an arena and with slightly more clothes on. But there you are. 2018 saw the band mark their 40th anniversary, and they did it in two ways, one on record and one on stage. On record, it was the release of the Torn Down remix set. Here's the Record Store Day 2018 picture disc, which features new remixes by Robert of one track from every one of their studio albums. There was some talk of having outside artists also remix Cure songs for this. Mogwai apparently did a remix of Faith, but that didn't transpire. There was also the 3 CD reissue version of Mixed Up, which contains Torn Down as CD 3. So Torn Down is a new Cure remix album that you can get by buying Mixed Up on 3 CD, or you can get by buying the vinyl edition of Torn Down. And this features a remix of one track from every Cure album. So 3 Imaginary Boys, M, The Drowning Man, A Strange Day, Just One Kiss, Shake Dog Shake, A Night Like This, Like Cockatoos, Plain Song, Never Enough, From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea, Want, The Last Day of Summer, Cut Here, Lost, and It's Over. All getting appearances on that, which comes to I think 18 songs or something like that. It's a fascinating excursion into all that could have been. 2018 also saw the band play 2 shows in London, one for Robert Smith's Meltdown Festival, and one at Hyde Park for the British Summertime Festival. And the Meltdown Festival was a show where nobody really knew exactly what was going to happen. It was just billed as Curætion-25, a night of music. It wasn't going to say what it was 25 of or anything like that, but as it turned out, Curætion-25 featured the band, Robert Smith and his Imaginary Boys, playing on stage a specifically designed set of material that was a thematic approach through the band's career. And Curætion-25 was the first of a number of shows which had a theme next to it. It was, I think, the 4th Cure show which had been nearly released in full, which I'd been present at. So I'd been present at Great Expectations at Finsbury Park, the Wild Mood Swing show that made up at least a fair chunk of the 5 Swing Live EP. I'd been at the Teenage Cancer Trust show in 2006, the O2 Arena show in 2009 that was broadcast on television. This was the first full Cure show I've been to, which was released from there to here, and I know where I am if I want to look where I am. But it was released in this super mega format, which was 4 CDs, 2 Blu-rays, and a book of pictures. The Cure at the Royal Festival Hall, the smallest show I'd seen them at since Nottingham Rock City in 1992. And here the band played a thematic selection of material, starting from 3 Imaginary Boys playing one song from each album in order, up to the 2 unreleased songs, It Can Never Be the Same and Step Into the Light, and then going backwards through their career, again playing one song from every album all the way through to Boys Don't Cry. And I think the Meltdown show was a fabulous experience. It's a shame that more people didn't get to experience it because of how good it was. There were some songs that had been played live that didn't get played live very often. So At Night, Other Voices, Banana Fishbones, Like Cockatoos, Jupiter Crash, 39, Us or Them, and It's Over, the last track on 413 Dream, played live for the only time since 2009 and for the only time by that lineup. And also featuring The Last Day of Summer, Want, If Only Tonight We Could Sleep, Sinking, and yeah, ending on Boys Don't Cry. Now, the show at the Royal Festival Hall, the Royal Festival Hall has members who have access to tickets one day in advance of everybody else. I remember during, like Cockatoos, I believe it was, the guy that was checking lasagna recipes for his Italian holiday and texting his partner that he was so bored and they haven't played a song I know yet. And I'm kind of like, just behind him going, we've played at night, Other Voices, A Strange Day, Banana Fish Bones. These are like, set list goal for Cure fans. You do not deserve to be here. Go to the fucking Hyde Park show where you'll get the Cure show that you want. And of course, the Cure show at Hyde Park was a 2.5 hour show where the band played their only major outdoor headlining show that year. They only played 2 shows in 2018, and both of them were on this release. And they played a potted history of the band's 40 years since the release of their first single, Killing an Arab, which happened, by the way, 44 years ago this week on the 21st of December 1978. And the anniversary show at Hyde Park, again, I know where I am, by the way, which is I'm in a bright blue t-shirt that is a little way back from Reeves at that show. And watching it, and especially during COVID when I was watching this, and I was like, I can't believe we ever had a time when we were able to just all be in a room and watch the bands that we love playing the songs that made us who we are. It was something which I think I'd taken for granted a little bit because I'd been able to do it so much over the previous 30 years of my life, and then all of a sudden finding that the thing which I couldn't do was the thing which had defined who I was for a long period of time. This music was the map when I was lost, and the Cure were one of those bands that formed part of that. And so I went to see the anniversary show when it was shown in the cinemas, and of course I bought the Blu-ray, which is here. So there's From There to Here set at the Royal Festival Hall, which is also on these 2 CDs, and then Anniversary live at Hyde Park, which is on there, but also on the 2 CDs here. And by the way, the audio mix on the CDs is different to the audio mix on the DVDs and the Blu-ray. The DVDs and the Blu-ray audio mix is designed to be played through television speakers and not through hi-fi speakers, and the CD mix is designed to be played through hi-fi speakers and all that type of stuff. Again, not released on vinyl because it would be about 8 vinyl discs. But it's 2 wildly different shows, as they've said, to celebrate 40 years of the Cure playing live. And I think Hyde Park is one of my favourite Cure shows, actually. It was just a glorious celebration. The supporting bill that day was phenomenally good. We had Interpol, Editors, Slow Dive, Ride, Twilight Sad, This Will Destroy You, Catherine Joseph. I saw, I think Puma Rosa were there as well. I saw a little bit of every band that played on every stage. First thing I did was I went in, I got my wristband so I could be at the section at the front of the stage, and then I left to walk to and from to find out how long it takes to go between each one of the stages. And by the way, it's 6.5 minutes to go from the back of the main stage to the back of the side stage, and then a minute and a half to get to the side stage that's around the corner, because there were 3 stages. I timed it all, and I got to see a little bit of every band that played, with one exception. Can't remember who it was, but I remember I didn't like them, and that's why I didn't see them. Anyway, doesn't matter now. I had a fantastic night. It was also one of the hottest shows I've ever been at. The other show that has been anywhere near as hot was PJ Harvey at the Brixton Academy, which was around about 2004, maybe 2002. And the Hyde Park show is one of my favourite Cure shows because it's just so much fun, and so many people that I knew were there. There were lots and lots of friends. Again, I think there were about 30, 40, 50 people I knew who were at the show, and it was lovely because no matter where you were near somebody that you knew and liked, and you were near a band that you knew and liked. And I saw it, and by the end of it, I was exhausted because the day before I'd been to see Roger Waters at Hyde Park as well. So by the time I got to the end of that, I really wanted to sit down, and it was astonishingly warm. I drank more water than I think I had in any other day in my life, and I was still incredibly warm. By the end, I did make the cardinal sin of buying a bootleg t-shirt just so I could wear something that wasn't super, super sweaty, because it was about 96 degrees that day, and there was no shade to be had anywhere. 2019 saw the band play festivals. They released the anniversary show at the cinemas. and I think later they released the Hyde Park show, and from there to here on Blu-ray. And they played the Disintegration shows at the Sydney Opera House. So they played Disintegration in full, plus a set of B-sides for 5 nights, I think. And then they played a festival tour starting at Dublin's Malahide Castle, which I saw with some of my friends, and they were supported by the Twilight Sad at that show, as well as I think Ride and Just Mustard. And then they played a number of other shows all across Europe. I also saw the Scottish show, which was I think Bella Houston Park, I think, and again supported by Mogwai and the Twilight Sad and Just Mustard. And incredible show, very different, much nicer than Dublin actually, much nicer crowd, lots and lots of friends there. And there are very definitely moments when I've been watching The Cure recently, and I've been with lots of my friends, and I'm like, I am so lucky to get to have these experiences. You know, where 18-year-old me would be amazed by what not 18-year-old me has lived and what I've experienced since then. But to be fair, some people go on holiday to Antigua. I go down the front to a Cure gig to go crying. So it's all the same at the end of the day. We all do the thing that we need to do that makes a difference. And the show at Glasgow didn't fit. It felt for a while, especially during COVID, that Glasgow show might have been the last time I ever saw The Cure. And I am so glad that is not the case. I am so incredibly glad that is not the case. Obviously, there was no shows in 2020, no shows in 2021. There was a show planned, I think, in Poland in 2020, which I had my eye on maybe going to, but obviously that got cancelled. 2021 saw Robert appear as guest vocalist on a track by Churches called How Not to Drown, and a track by Gorillaz called, I think, Strange Times. And then 2022 saw the release, at long last, of the long-fabled Wish reissue. This is the picture disc for Record Store Day, which was astonishingly expensive. I don't want to tell you how much. And the 3 CD version of Wish as well, which had a number of unreleased tracks, including a lot of instrumental demos, the songs that were on the Lost Wishes cassette, B-sides, remixes, and so on. And by the way, one thing that I did get pointed out, which I hadn't really noticed until today, is actually the Cure logo on Wish is actually, it's the same image, but it's all just the way that it's curled. It's set at angles to look like it is actually a different letter, but it isn't. It's all just variations upon a C. That's a C there bent up. That's a C on its side as well to create the R, and then that's a C there with the E created by the tail of the C as well. Very clever. Yeah, there you are. Again, I only found that out today when I saw it on Twitter. I'm like, why didn't I see that before? I've been looking at that for 30 years and haven't noticed. And that brings us to this year's tour. Shows of a Lost World. I'm just trying to think of the word now. Kind of previewing is the word. Previewing some of the songs from what is hopefully going to be the upcoming studio record, presumably Songs of a Lost World. I saw 5 shows on this tour. I saw Birmingham, Cardiff, and the 3 Wembley shows. And it's my favourite Cure tour that I've seen so far. The atmosphere was wonderful. It was joyous. It was a celebration. It was a return. It was we're back in. We've missed you. Certainly that was the atmosphere I was getting from the crowd. It was these were not fan service sets either, although it was the band's longest UK tour since 1996, I believe, and certainly they sold more tickets than they did in 1996. I remember at the Birmingham NEC, the back half of the venue was curtained off, so they sold 5,000 tickets in Birmingham. They sold 15,000 this time round. And then they had the show in Cardiff, which has got a capacity of I think 7,000, which is the smallest show on the tour, and then the 3 shows at Wembley Arena with a capacity of around about 14,000 as well. And the Birmingham show, I arrived early, I queued, I was on the barrier, I was in between Robert and Simon, and it was I thought it was an incredible show, but also it was historic because Robert lost his voice and Robert couldn't really sing by the end of the set. They didn't cut the set short, they extended the end of a forest by a few minutes to maybe make the show feel a little bit more like it was something a bit bigger than it was, but by the end you could clearly hear Robert couldn't really sing and everyone else was singing for him. and as a result, they changed the set around. They put Cold and Three Imaginary Boys into the set, which had a slightly lower vocal register. They played If Only Tonight We Could Sleep, not my favourite Cure song. And they put Primary into the set as well. So at Birmingham, I saw one song which I didn't see on any other show, which is If Only Tonight We Could Sleep. And about 4 or 5 songs every night rotated. And of the other songs, some of the songs changed place. So sometimes The Forest was in the main set and sometimes it was in the encore. Sometimes Cold was in the main set, sometimes it was on the encore as well. But they also played 5 new songs from the upcoming album. So those are Alone, A Fragile Thing, Nothing Is Forever, End Song, and I Can Never Say Goodbye. And the second show on the tour, Cardiff, was the one where I cried. I'll admit to it. Yeah, I did. They played Close Down. I've never seen them play Close Down. I'd always wanted to see them play Close Down. And they brought out the same guitar that they bring out for a night like this, and they played Close Down. And I was like, I can let my guard down now. I can relax into this experience. This experience is not going to be taken away from me by COVID or by ill health or by anything. I'm just going to be able to be here and to be able to see the songs that I love and to hold on to them, you know, and all those feelings that I had. So when I was a 16, 17-year-old, I was listening to my cassette of Disintegration because the cassette had 2 extra songs, and only one of those songs was on the B-side in a live form of Pictures of You, by the way. So Close Down, well, you know, that was one of those songs where I was like, I always wanted to hear that song live. You know, I couldn't get to see the show in 1989. The 2 songs they played the most that I hadn't seen in my life were Close Down and Same Deep Water As You, but I got Close Down in Cardiff and I couldn't believe it. And I was like, and all of a sudden I was like taken back to the 16-year-old me. You know, the kid that was in the room, in his bedroom, surrounded by his records, who were sometimes his only friends and certainly his best friends, because records never went away. They never lied to you. They never betrayed you. And the 16-year-old kid version of me that was in that room was going, one day I'll get to be in the same room as The Cure. And I've been able to do that 30, 40 times during the course of my life, is to be in the same room as The Cure as they play the songs. And I've been able to stand there and to watch these musicians play the songs that helped me when I was lost, or when I was alone, or when I was scared, or when I was hurting, or when I was hopeless, because they were the songs were the rope that I held on to when there was nothing else around sometimes. And it seemed like my life was beset by monsters and surrounded by evil. And that, yeah, it's been really grim and dark sometimes. I'm not going to pretend it hasn't been. It's been pretty bleak sometimes at some points in my life. And sometimes those songs were the thing that I held on to. They were the things that gave me the pleasure that I otherwise couldn't find in my world. And seeing The Cure play Close Down in Cardiff, and I was like, wow, man, feelings. And I was just like, I can relax. I can let it all go. And, you know, like a lot of people, I carried up a lot of residual tension during COVID, when we were surrounded by the fuckery of the government, when we were surrounded by this invisible, vicious, ever-mutating organism that could kill any of us at any time, where we lived with this constant fear that one cough could actually be the beginning of the end, where we lived in this constant fear where maybe Boris Johnson will be Prime Minister forever, and he's awful at it. We lived in this constant fear that, you know, the government, we were led by, you know, imbeciles. At the time when the world needed the best, we had the very worst in charge, certainly in America and obviously also in Britain. And I was like, I just need to survive this, because it was a crisis unlike anything else. It's very possible to say that actually as a nation and as a world, we've got a degree of post-traumatic stress around about having endured COVID. And I know that my experiences, whilst very, very real to me, are absolutely minuscule compared to the experiences of some of my friends who have worked in hospitals and have had to hold people's hands as they've been dying, have been, you know, the person that's been there as people have died of COVID, or you know, I mean, the losses I've had during COVID and the stresses I've had during COVID are tiny compared to that. You know, I've had friends that have died of COVID, I've had friends that have died of suicide during COVID and because of COVID, but I lived, I survived. And not to say that I've got survivor's guilt, I absolutely haven't, but to recognise that what we as a world have been through is been an enormously traumatic experience. as to be separated from those that we love and that we like, and from the experiences that we live for such a prolonged period of time. When they played Closed Down in Cardiff, it all hit me, and I was like, we made it, man. We made it. We fucking did it. Those of us that made it through, and we should never have taken that for granted. I never took seeing bands for granted. I always knew that inside of me there was that 16, 17-year-old me, that those bands were really, really important to. And one day, if I was super, super lucky, I might get to be in the same room as they're playing some of those songs. And it's the thing I do. It's the only thing I do, is to go and see the bands that I love play the music that kept me alive at the time when the world felt like it was trying to kill me. And yeah, Cardiff was an incredible show. They played Closed Down, they played Last Day of Summer, they played Trust, they played Faith, and that's the first time I've seen Faith outside of a Reflection show since 1996. And then I went to Wembley, and I saw them 3 nights in Wembley. I got snowed in the first night of Wembley because it was no snow setting off, and then lots of snow. All my trains got cancelled, and I left during a forest because I knew it was going to be difficult to get back. I was saved by the bear, who helped me get a hotel, and I got a hotel for the night. And then I got up. I was like, I don't even know if I'm going to get home. And the first night, they played Last Day of Summer, they played Once, Hanging Garden, Faith and 100 Years. Second night at Wembley, Twilight Sad were supporting all of these shows, by the way. Second night at Wembley, Twilight Sad played Keep Yourself Warm, which they don't play very often. And The Cure played Charlotte Sometimes, The Figureheads, an encore of Plainsong, Prayers for Rain and Disintegration, and Let's Go to Bed. Oh, that reminds me of something I need to get from downstairs. Hang on. And then the third night at Wembley, which was my favourite of the shows, was the longest and the final show. And I got a set list. I got a Cure set list. I've always wanted a Cure set list, but I got one. And as you can see from the set list that we've got there, we got Cold at Night, M, Play for Today, Want, Trust. And then on the other side, we got Three Imaginary Boys, which was only played twice on the tour, and I saw both the shows. We got 100 Years, Primary, A Forest, and Doing the Unstuck there. So a number of songs. So this set list was given to me by one of the security guards. During the encore, I was air drumming to 10:15 Saturday night on the barrier, just slightly to the left of Perry, and he just passed me a bit of paper. I'm like, oh, thanks. I'm like, oh. And I was like, I've got a set list. I've got a Cure set list, which is a great thing that I'd always wanted. But they ended the last show with 2 songs which they hadn't rehearsed, 10:15 Saturday night and Killing an Arab, and that's probably my third favourite Cure song, or probably more correctly, Wembley. The last night at Wembley was my third favourite Cure show out of all the ones that I've seen over the past 30-something years. The other 2 were the Meltdown show here and the Nottingham Rock City show in 1992. I also got a Twilight Sad set list. This one's for Birmingham. Again, if you don't like the Twilight Sad, that doesn't mean anything to you. But to me, I'm like, Kill It in the Morning, Dead City, VTR, That Summer. Oof, what an incredible set that is. As alongside the other songs, which are also, of course, absolutely bloody brilliant. But that is where the Cure are now. I've seen to date the last Cure show. Hopefully there'll be more next year. There was no sense when I was watching them play that I was watching a band that was anything other than at the absolute peak of their game. These are some of the best Cure shows I've ever seen from a purely objective perspective. There is just this wonderful chemistry. You can see the way that the band interact, the way that Reeves and Simon interact, the way that Robert was looking at Simon during the end of A Forest, and you could just see that he was just like, I bloody love being in this band with these guys. They're really bloody brilliant. And there's that sense of, and even the interactions that we had with Robert and Reeves had with Perry as well, as you could see that this was a band that really was not taking this for granted, that they knew what they had and what they experienced was special, that most people never get to an experience like that, you know. And just being as a fan of a band is to see when a band has got that going on in their lives, and you kind of go, as a fan of the band, you watch a band and you go, yeah, this band know that this is rare, and you kind of think of all the things that you could do for a living, of all the lives that you could have lived, to live the one that is most closely or as near as possible to the life that you would want to live. You know, I mean, I got the sense when I was watching The Curious, they really enjoy this. They really like doing this. They value it, and it's an important part of their lives. It's an important part of our lives. You know, me just as a fan of a band, just watching a band play it's really important to me to be a fan of that band, and to see a band that actually really just likes doing this, as opposed to just a band that does it just for money or because, you know, whatever the reasons are. It was, yeah, so this tour was my favourite Cure tour, this year's tour. And the new songs are very, very good. They remind me an awful lot of some of the songs that are on and around the Bloodflowers era. You know, heavy, dark meditations upon the nature of life and death and mortality and age. I Can Never Say Goodbye, for example. And I think that the performance of I Can Never Say Goodbye in Cardiff was particularly strong because that's where Robert's brother lived. And the song was written about Robert's brother dying. And he said, oh, you know, sorry we haven't been to Cardiff, but I've been to Cardiff lots and lots of times. I just haven't been, you know, to sing. So for me, at least, being able to see those songs played by those people is you know, an amazing experience. Although I'm kind of starting to repeat myself, I should probably come to a conclusion. This has been my favourite Cure tour in a very, very long time. The past 10 years, I have seen The Cure play some of their very, very best shows that I've ever seen them play. And I feel super, super lucky to have been part of it. And I'm very, very aware that, you know, we came really close to losing all of this stuff during COVID. And I'm very, very glad that we didn't. Obviously, not all of us came through that. And we all have people that we love and miss who didn't make it through to the other side of COVID for whatever reason, be it old age or whatever. But you know, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And if 18-year-old me could see what not 18-year-old me has done over the years, the amount of times I've seen the bands that I've loved, the places that I've been, and the loves that I've experienced, and the laughter and everything else, and the communion and the sense of connection with other human beings, I'm super, super lucky. And I know it. Yeah, that's where we're going to wrap up here. So it's been 2.5 weeks since I did one of these. Won't be 2.5 weeks until I do the next one, because I'm on holiday for 17 days, the longest period of time I have had on holiday for years. I went 107 days without a day off earlier on this year, and I'm going to tell you, I started to feel it by the end. But now there's 17 days. You'll be sick of me uploading crap about old bands that I like in future. So that is me bringing the my talk through the Cure's career, which started probably about 2 years ago, to a close. I might do a ranking at some point, but not today. I'm going to go and sit downstairs. I'm going to go and have a drink of fizzy orange and maybe some cookies. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you hopefully very, very soon indeed. Okay, bye.